Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. One of the best things about Wofford is the importance of community, which extends to alumni and their support of the college. This past year, we were ranked actually number 19 by the Princeton Review for Best Alumni Network in the country. And tonight's event is another example of why. Joining me and Dean of Students, Roberta Hurley, is NBC Today Show host and Wofford graduate and Wofford trustee Craig Melvin, class of 2001. Craig's been all over the country covering everything from Tiger Woods to COVID-19, but he's made some time this evening to talk with Wofford students. In a few moments, Dean Hurley will ask Craig a few questions, giving him the opportunity to tell you a little bit about how he ended up at Wofford, his experience as a Terrier, his journey to the Today Show, and I hope he'll also share with you news about his new book, Pops, coming out later this spring. I will warn you that Craig has indicated he may take the fifth when Dean Hurley starts digging up his past here at Wofford College. If you don't get all the answers you want, we'll squeeze them out of him. There will be an opportunity, of course, for all of you to join Craig on the screen to ask questions. If you'd like to be considered, please send a question through the Q&A feature on the Zoom, and Joanne Brasington will get you to a panelist position while your question's being answered. So Dean Hurley, let's begin.
Thanks, Dr. Sam. Craig, how are you and how's your family?
Family's well. Dean Bigger, thanks for asking. They're upstairs and eating dinner. And I will admit to you, I did not know that you would be asking the questions. Had I known that, I would not have agreed to participate, but here we are.
Well, that's why Joanne is so good at her job. She doesn't, reveal things like that to people.
Yes, clearly.
Yeah. Well, it's great to see you, and thank you for taking time to be with us. I'm your #1 fan, but there's some students on here who say that they're your #1 fan. So we'll figure it out by the end of the night. But it's been 20 years since you were a student here and that I could harass you. But I can honestly say that I'm not surprised at where you are now, personally and professionally. Are you surprised?
Yes, admittedly, I think we're going to be honest tonight. No, I'm a bit surprised, Dean Bigger. I'm happily married with 2 kids. A job that I love. No, this is, I thought that I would probably end up in the field of journalism. I did not necessarily think that I would end up where I am, doing it on a daily basis at this level. So, yeah. I guess I am a bit surprised in that respect.
Well, I know I've met your brilliant wife, and especially in Women's History Month, I applaud her, and she's terrific. We're glad she's a part of the Wofford community now too.
I was going to have her come down, but she took the boy to karate, so she can't participate.
That's important.
He got his yellow belt on Saturday.
Well, I could tell the students what I thought you were involved in as a student, but we thought it'd be better if you told the students what you were involved in outside of the classroom when you were a student at Wofford. And if you could change anything about your student experience at Wofford, what would you change?
Let me start with the last part of the question first, and then I'll back into the first part. What I would change, and I think that, now that I'm older, I know that this is normal. The frontal lobe doesn't apparently become fully developed until you're well into your 20s. So I use that as part of my excuse. I did not develop a legitimate intellectual curiosity until the second part of my tenure at Wofford. I would have changed that. I sort of had to find myself. Unfortunately, I did. But when I got to campus, it was just, and when you said 20 years, when you say it out loud, it makes me feel old. And I'm not, I don't think, but I guess 20 years. It's funny because most of the folks that we're talking to now, 20 years ago, they were crawling or learning how to walk. And that's actually kind of sad. But When I graduated from high school and I started at Wofford, I was part of Boys State, and Brand Stilley was a big part of that, and I came to know the campus that way, and that's how I was introduced to Wofford, and you know, I got a great scholarship offer, and my mom was a school teacher, my dad was a mail clerk, and I didn't have you know, there wasn't a lot of money lying around for college, and I got accepted to some other place, Morehouse, and you know, Carolina, and Clemson, and Furman, and some other places, George Washington, which at the time was like, which just seem funny now considering how expensive it is, but back then George Washington University in DC was like 30,000 a year, and I remember my father scoffed at the idea of spending that kind of money to go to college. So anyway, that's primarily how I ended up at Wofford. And I got there, and because of an organization in high school called Key Club, I knew a lot of the folks at Wofford, and Boys State. And so I knew some folks, and I pledged a fraternity and became active in the fraternity and got involved in campus union. And you know, we tried to start a campus TV station, and there was the campus newspaper. And so I got really involved on campus in a lot of, just a lot of different ways. But yeah, I mean, I think that was, for me at least, I knew, and my mother helped me in this regard. I knew that I would have gotten lost at a large university or large college. So, you know, back then Wofford was, you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, Dean Bigger. I think it's probably about 1,150 students max. So, you know, it was one of those things where I knew all the professors, and I couldn't get lost in class. So that was, and I also worked in the president's office at the time, which was a big help. I had a work study. Back then, there's a fellow named Dr. Lassane. You know, he was the president of the college. I mean, NAIF was probably in middle school back then. But that opened a lot of doors as well. Helped me land an internship in Washington. Dr. Lassane's son worked for Senator Fritz Hollings at the time, so I was able to land an internship during the interim of my junior year.
That, I know you had a great experience, and I'm glad that I was the dean while you were here. And so let's move to 2020. So in 2 weeks, it'll be the 1-year anniversary of when President Sam Hatt sent out an email to students and told them to go home for some remote learning. So this year has been a challenge for everybody. Wofford has been resilient. Our students have been terrific about following our new guidelines, even though they don't like them. But tell us how it's affected you personally and professionally, how this past year has affected your life.
Well, on a personal level, you know, my wife had the virus back in November. She was at the time working for Fox Sports, covering the NFL sidelines, and contracted the virus on a work trip out in Las Vegas, covering the Raiders. And at that point, we knew a lot more about the virus than we did this time last year. So we managed to self-isolate her in you know, part of the house. And fortunately, me and the kids and I, we didn't contract the virus. But on, you know, on a personal level, Dean Bigger, you know, I think it's been different for a lot of folks, and I think that's how we can explain to a certain extent the response to the virus. You know, I've lost colleagues, friends, to the virus, and especially in the first few months when we really didn't know. You know, if you'll recall, I mean, we didn't know whether, you know, surface to surface, or you know, whether for a while, you know, people weren't really wearing masks for a while, you know, for at least for a month or so, but on a professional level, I never stopped going to work. I mean, there was a 2-week period in March where I had come in contact with the producer who'd contracted the virus, who ended up being fine, but out of an abundance of caution, they made me, I'll turn you around here to show you the home studio. That's the setup down here. And they built that in not an exaggeration. They built that in 2 days, and they did about 60 of them for the company, so we could all work remotely. So I was going into Studio 1A every day for the Today Show, and initially it was just me and Hoda Kotb, and the two of us, one camera guy, a security guy, and the bomb sniffing dog, which we found very odd um, from the beginning. Daisy is her name, and Daisy has been there literally every day since the pandemic started. It's very bizarre, but I digress. So for literally 4 months, it was just the four or five of us, no hair, no makeup, no wardrobe, not to sound whatever, but for perspective, and you've been in the studio a couple of times, and Nate's been there, and Studio 1A, before the pandemic, in a given day, you'd have 100 people minimum, and you'd have celebrities in and out. You have camera folks and security folks and hair and makeup and wardrobe, and like that was all gone. And on top of that, we were tasked with the death, doom, and destruction on a daily basis. For a while, we were starting the show with, this morning, 12,000 people are dead as a result of, or 20,000 or 30, and that was the drumbeat every day for months, and that took a toll on the soul and the spirit, if you will, and personally, I mean, the kids weren't going to school, so Lindsay was homeschooling primarily. I was going into work for the first 2.5 hours. I would hop in the car because we live in Connecticut, and at about 9:30, I would rush back to do my cable show at 11 from the basement here, and that was the reality for several months, and that was it. And then all of a sudden, George Floyd happens. And then it becomes abundantly clear that we can't cover that story from the studio. So I then start traveling again to Minneapolis and in Washington and Houston, briefly. So it was just, I mean, from a professional standpoint, Dean Bigger, it could not have been more rewarding. But what I discovered in 2020 is that as a journalist, when work is rewarding, that's typically not good personally. It's not good for America. So it was a lot, and it is a lot. That being said, all of that being said, it is nice to, and I see over your right shoulder there, be positive, which is so apropos, I think, for this part of the conversation. On the back end now, being able to cover this story, because I was there. I remember vividly being in New York City as that aircraft carrier came in, and they were converting that to a field hospital, and being in Central Park, and that was being converted to a field hospital, and a lot of folks being legitimately concerned that this was going to turn into not to dismiss 515,000 people being dead as a result of a virus so far, but there are a lot of folks early on who thought it was going to be even worse than that. And being on the front lines of the response, and now being able to be on the front lines to a certain extent to the recovery, and the President Biden announcing a couple of hours ago that we're going to have enough vaccinations by the end of May to cover every American. So that's a very long answer to a short question, Dean Bigger. You'll discover I'm not really as good answering questions as asking questions. I apologize in advance.
Before we turn it over to the students, let me just say, as a friend and as your former dean, that I really appreciate the integrity you bring to your profession. That I watched the Today Show every morning getting dressed long before you were born, but it is so much fun every day to see you every morning in my home. And really, I can't tell you how much fun that is for me, and to be able to, email you or contact you about an issue is great. And again, thank you for all the support you give your alma mater. I mean, Wofford is a better college because of you and your support and your family's support.
You, I'm not going to get sappy here, but you don't know how much that means coming from you. So thank you. And thank you from the bottom of my heart, for our friendship. And it goes back, sadly, a couple decades now. So I guess we're both getting a little old, but I would just echo what you said about my commitment to the college. I don't think a lot of folks realize that Roberta Bigger has been fighting the good fight on the front lines. Here's the thing. This is what people don't like to talk about. Like Nave Samhat, president of the college, it's a glamorous job. He gets the glory. Dean Bigger is only getting the phone calls when something bad has happened. No one's calling Dean Bigger to check in. Say, hey, how's it going, Dean? Oh, it's you doing something. And I can relate to that, Dean Bigger. Unfortunately, my phone never rings.
We have a great vice president of communications who's helping me craft a better image now. So I'll turn it over to Nate.
Smart.
Well, yeah, for the glory. Thank you.
$150 million.
Oh, yeah. Well, and Craig, you know this, as a trustee, the college is in a wonderful position because of trustees and support that you give, but it's really the work that the likes of Dean Bigger and Joanne Brazington and Martin Agner is on here and others around the college trying to and working hard to transform the lives of our students. Many of whom are on this call, and we have some questions for them.
Oh, sweet. Hey, are we screening these questions?
Sort of. I screened some of the questions, but now people are popping on that I don't even know about. So we're just going to play it by ear and see what happens.
I'll trust them.
Right.
So our first question is going to come from Lawson Devers, and Lawson is a business economics major from Merle's Inlet. She's a junior. Lawson, you have someone else with you, so you're going to need to introduce, and then you can ask Craig the question.
Perfect. Hi, Mr. Craig Melvin. First of all, this is one of my friends, Adair. She was just, we went on a little walk before. So I was like, just come on, we'll do this together. But
Adair, it's nice to see you. Lawson, just before we start, what's with the balloons?
Oh, we had a little party 2 weeks ago, just like a little get together. And so they were just left over and they were just cute. So we just left them up.
What was the occasion?
Valentine's Day. We just had a small little 4 group of girls come over, but we just left it up because we left it.
Nice.
There you go. Under the guidelines. That's the perfect, following the guidelines. Thank you. Awesome.
Yes, I'm trying my best. But I'm a huge fan. Me and my mom watch the Today Show every morning whenever I'm home. And so I was super excited whenever I saw that you were coming to talk to us. So I just wanted to ask, what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self? I'm a junior right now, and I would just love to hear your advice and just all of your wisdom.
Oh, I have no wisdom. That's a really heavy question. My 20-year-old self. So let's see, 20
junior year or senior.
Oh boy. It's because not to belabor the point, but seriously, Lawson, I would just say boys and girls are so different. Like my 20-year-old self, I think back and look back, and on so many levels, I'm so ashamed of the kind of seriously. But
maybe there's some good advice for the boys too.
Yes.
Well, I would say this, and I don't say this lightly. I for a long time, and I struggle with it now to a certain extent. I would get how do I see this? Not worked up or anxious about the next step and the job or the promotion or what am I going to do next or and it really became all consuming. And I'll never forget, when I graduated from Wofford in May. I graduated on my birthday in 2001, May 20th. And I went back. Oh, you're not a Taurus. You're a Gemini. But so I went backpacking in Europe with a fraternity brother of mine for 2 months. He's a dentist now in the area, and he was and I timed it such that I graduated on Sunday. We were going to leave for our trip on Tuesday. I was going to come back 2 weeks from that and start work on Wednesday, and that was it. I've worked every day since. And he like took a break. He went out west to Colorado and found himself and did all this stuff. And I didn't do it because I was so paranoid about missing out on an opportunity that I went straight to work. And it's worked out fine, I guess you could argue, but it manifested itself in other ways early on in my professional career. It cost me friendships. It cost me relationships. It cost me in my 20s a modicum of sanity that it cost me. And it was before people started talking about like mental health and anxiety and like work-life balance and all that stuff that we talk about now. And I look back on it now, and I wasn't happy in my early 20s because I was working towards something. I didn't even know what I was working toward, and it was all consuming. And I don't regret it, maybe, I guess, but I wish that I'd done things differently. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. I tend to ramble. I get to my point eventually, but it just takes me forever.
No, that was perfect. Thank you so much. And it was such an honor and pleasure to get to talk to you.
No, good to see you. And tell your mom thanks for watching, and your friend Adair, thanks for walking with you.
I will. Good advice. Bye.
Okay, next, we're supposed to have Tyrus Peoples, but my friend Tyrus has been replaced by Drew Reynolds. Drew, can you explain this?
What happened to Tyrus?
Yes, well, Tyrus sent me the Zoom link to log on, I guess, to watch it. That's what my plan was originally. And then I think when I joined, it had my name as Tyrus, not Drew, so I just changed it real quick.
Okay, that makes so much sense. Okay, Drew, I'm gonna unpromote you unless you want to ask a question, and I will find Tyrus and promote him to panelists. In the meantime, Jacob Hollifield is an English and history major from Chesney, South Carolina, and he's a senior, and he wants to go into journalism. So
wonderful.
Let's see what he has to ask.
Joanne, you're very good at this, by the way, this facilitating.
Good.
If your current job doesn't work out, I see a future.
All right. I've had a little practice lately.
Hi, Mr. Melvin. I wanted to ask you about your journalism career, and I was wondering if you could just tell me and the group a little bit about how you've made it in journalism, specifically without a journalism degree and coming from a school without a journalism program. So I was wondering what skills you picked up through your Wofford education that pertain to your career, and what you had to pick up along the way once you got into your career. And then lastly, what advice you have for aspiring journalists at Wofford, and how can they stand out against students from other schools who have journalism degrees?
Jacob, this is what's going to make you a great journalist. What you just did there is you took an opportunity for a question and you asked 6. Well played, sir. Well played. I like what you did there. And I like the glasses as well, sir. So, here's the thing, Jacob, and I've gotten that question a couple of times. Jacob, by the way, where are you? Are you on campus? Is that campus housing?
I'm in the publications room.
The publications room, what is that?
It's like our newspaper office.
There's a newspaper office? Let me tell you, Jacob, when I was there, we wrote the paper in our dorm room, and you would you'd write your article and you'd run it to somebody who was in another dorm room, and they would run it over to Old Main, and it would, not to sound like the old man, but you don't know how lucky you are, sir, to have a newspaper office. A couple things. I'll try to answer all 6 of your questions, but If I don't, then you jump in and call me on it. One thing that Wofford teaches you, and that you're not going to get, I think, at a lot of other colleges and universities, and it served me well, professionally, especially, and then personally, I would say to a certain extent. It's what I call intellectual curiosity. A good journalist is a good generalist. I don't know a great deal about anything. I don't know a great deal about anything, but I'd like to think I know a little bit about a lot of different things, which I would contend is somewhat emblematic of a liberal arts education. So there's that. I picked that up at Wofford. I had no interest in philosophy, and then all of a sudden you take a Michelson class and you're like, oh, huh, okay, maybe there are some real world applications for this. I had, little to no interest in economics, and then you take an economics class. Okay, so you're not going to get that everywhere. So that has served me, I would contend, extraordinarily well professionally. And it's funny because a lot of the folks that I work with, whether it's Hodo or Savannah or some of our correspondents, I think people would be surprised if they knew their educational background. Like some of them have journalism backgrounds, but Savannah was, she graduated top of her class at Georgetown Law. One of my favorite correspondents, a guy named Tom Costello, who covers transportation and space and some government agencies. He studied business. Pete Williams, our justice correspondent, who worked for Vice President Cheney back in the day. I think Pete covered, he wasn't he didn't have a journalism background, and he actually didn't have a legal background as well. I say all that to say, some of the best journalists are not folks who study journalism. And the dirty little secret is not to diminish print or broadcast journalism, but at the end of the day, you can learn how to write copy in print, and you can learn how to write broadcast copy in 6 to 9 months. I know that to be true because I did. I learned how to do it in 6 to 9 months. I took 2 journalism classes at the University of South Carolina between the summer of my junior and senior year, one in reporting, one in TV production. And most of the things that I use from a TV standpoint, I learned there in those classes. So I think that, and I've said this before, and not in this setting, I'm actually somewhat suspicious of people in our business who've majored in journalism or communications. Only because, especially these days, that means they've devoted a good chunk of their higher education to learning like how to write copy or how to like be on TV or how to write for digital, and they haven't learned, or they haven't spent as much time learning the bricks, if you will. That's what I call it. The bricks of the trade. And the bricks of the trade or the reading or the writing or the curiosity. It's the folks that are bringing something else to the table. You'll discover, if you're serious about journalism after you graduate, people with journalism degrees and communication degrees, they're a dime a dozen. And in New York City, a comms degree and a journalism degree and $5, it'll get you a decent cup of coffee. And that's about it. And that doesn't really separate you from the field. You asked so many questions, I can't remember if I answered all of them.
I think you pretty much covered it.
I love the glasses, I really do. Warby Parker?
New York City.
Are you? It's still called the Old Gold and Black, right? You guys haven't changed the name.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay. I would encourage you at some point to go back in the archives and look at some of the letters that I used to write for the paper. I apologize in advance. I'm ashamed.
All right. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jacob.
Thank you, Jacob. Next, we have Tyrus. The mystery of where's Tyrus has been solved. So Tyrus Peoples is a senior government major from Lexington, South Carolina.
Oh, that was my major. Did you go to high school in Lexington?
I did not. I went to White Knoll High School. It was built in 2000, so it's a newer high school in the area.
Yeah, you know what? You didn't have to say it was built in 2000. I get it. I know it was built my junior year at Wofford. I get it, Tyrus Peoples. How about this? How about you stop passing off your login information to your friends? How about that?
Cyrus
just trying to help
is
him out.
treasurer of the student government too.
He's a what? What'd you say, Dean Bigger?
For 48 more hours, he's treasurer of the student government.
48 hours. Have you been impeached?
I've
The
not.
election.
No. There's an election going on today. That's going to end in the next 48 hours. But I've been a good treasurer that hasn't been impeached. So yes.
You're gonna do next year.
The plan is to go to law school, but there are also other options as well. I'm gonna be going to apply to Cambridge pretty soon as well, and so there's different things to pursue possibly. So nothing nailed down just yet, but different options hopefully.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
The plan is to be an attorney. Is what I want to do, but
Come
I will see where
Tyrus.
life takes me.
A lawyer?
Yeah, yes, sir.
What kind of law?
The plan right now would be corporate law, which I know kind of sounds icky, probably being in New York, a lot of corporate lawyers up there, but that's the plan.
You're not concerned about your soul being intact at all.
Well, thank you for being here. I just wanted to ask, I just wanted to ask you one simple question, Mr. Melvin, and that was, in what way did you change Wofford for the better?
In what way did I change it for the better?
Yes, sir.
You know what? When I was there, you
Yes,
know
sir.
what? I gotta be honest with you, Tyrus. I'm not sure if we're being honest. Actually, you know what? I'll take that back. I'd like to think that since I graduated, I've done more good than bad. But when I was there, I pledged a fraternity that heretofore, at least at that point, folks that looked like me and you had not pledged that fraternity. And it's funny because I did not realize that until I was going through the rush process. And I had grown up in, we grew up in the same area. I went to Columbia High School, but my mother especially made certain that we were exposed to lots of different things and people. And so I wasn't as consumed, if you will, by race in the late 90s as maybe some folks were. And I rushed this fraternity because of, some of my buddies were doing it and it seemed cool. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Then all of a sudden, a couple weeks in, it's like, hey, no black guy has ever been a part of the fraternity. I was like, really? That seems weird, but okay. And as the process continued, it became a bit more of a thing. I would like to think that small act of wanting to hang out with buddies and create a network of friends that I still have now, actually. I'd like to think that advanced the college in some small way. Long before the current movement. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
And Tyrus, I would also say this, not to go off on a tangent, but when I 1997, when I was a freshman at Wofford, this isn't an exaggeration. There were 66 people of color at the college, 66. And in my class, there were less than 12. I can't remember the exact number, but there were less than 12 of us there, black guys who didn't play a sport. I did not know that when I became a freshman at Wofford. And I came to know it early on. And I'd like to think that when I left 4 years later, we were in a slightly better spot in that regard.
Do you want to talk just a minute about your experience starting the television station and interviewing Davis Hawk?
Oh dear God, Dean Bigger. I will.
Or
since
you can
asked.
pass to the next.
No,
speaker.
no, I'll ask. And I also want to apologize to Tyrus for mocking corporate law. There are a lot of good corporate lawyers. I haven't met them yet, but I'm sure they're out there. And there are other ways to keep your soul intact, Tyrus. So when I was at Wofford, we thought it would be Brian Rawlinson's still there, isn't he, Dean Bigger? Isn't Brian Rawlinson there?
Yes, he is.
So back then, I don't remember what he was doing back then, but there are a couple of us, York Gerald, and there are a couple of us. We thought we'd start a campus TV station because I was interested in broadcast journalism. And so anyway, make a long story short, Tyrus. And this may still be the case, but back then, when you were part of a fraternity, you kind of at lunch or dinner or your meals, you kind of sat with your fraternity brothers, your sorority sisters. And we were talking about this campus TV station we were trying to get off the ground. And there's a guy in the fraternity, I'll never forget it, was a guy named Mitch Bird, who, by the way, Tyrus, is a lawyer. And he's a good guy. So there's that. Look him up on Facebook. Mitchell King Bird, Kappa Sigma. And he was like, hey, you should interview the neo-Nazi for the TV station. And I was like, what? Neo-Nazi on campus? He's like, oh yeah, that guy over there, you know, he's a Nazi. And there was a healthy dose of skepticism at the table. This guy used to be dressed in all black. His name was David. Well, his name at the college was Davis Hawk. And we always saw him, but no one ever talked to him because, you know, he was the weird guy dressed in all black. And so he planted this seed. And even back then, like if there was a big interview to be gotten, I wanted to get it, Tyrus. So I remember vividly after lunch, like basically running out of Burwell and like chasing the guy down. I was like, hey, you're neo-Nazi? I'm giving you I'm paraphrasing the conversation, by the way. And he was like, well, he was like, yes. He didn't deny it. He basically acknowledged that he was. And I told him that we were starting this campus TV station and I would like to sit down and talk to him about his views on the world. That's how I phrased it. And much to my surprise, in that moment, he agreed. So then I was forced to try and figure out how to do this interview with a neo-Nazi that no one knew about on campus for a TV station that did not exist on campus. So we got a camera, invited the guy to my dorm room, and we sat and we talked. And I won't bore you with all the details, but I would say, Tyrus, that my First Amendment rights, to a certain extent, back in the early 2000s, were trampled as a student, and we were not permitted to run the interview in its entirety on the campus TV station that did not exist. Instead, we were forced to run it as part of a larger conversation, which in hindsight, as an adult, probably made a bit more sense. But it's funny because that's kind of how my career in journalism started. And not to spoil it for you, but you should Google Davis Hawk. It would be revealed several years later that his real name wasn't Davis Hawk. His last name was Greenbaum. He was in fact Jewish, and he ended up being sued by the federal government for like a variety of scams, and he ended up dying a terrible death a while back in a car. Like, it's just a whole bizarre story, but I would encourage you to look it up, Tyrus. And I can tell by the look on your face that that was not the direction that you thought that story was going.
An abrupt ending for sure, very morbid ending. But thank you for being here and for answering the question. Thank you, Mr. Melvin.
No, good luck, and I'm glad you weren't indicted, and good luck in law school.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tyrus.
Joanne, I feel like I feel like this isn't going well.
Really?
I don't
think
know.
it's going really well.
Is it? Because I'm kind of rambling on and I'm telling these awful stories about neo-Nazis, and there's Alyssa who's popped up, and
Yeah, she's 2 people away from talking to you. Next is Grayson Bateman. Grayson is class of 2024. He's an undeclared biology major, and he's a Boy State person.
Grayson,
Yes,
Say hello,
sir.
Grayson.
are you Federalist or Nationalist?
I was a nationalist.
We won't hold it. Grayson, my God, man, why are you in some sort of why are you in a closet?
No, sir. I'm in my room. It's just it's really dark in here right now.
What, turn on a light. Like, what are you hiding?
Were you a nationalist or a federalist?
I was a proud Federalist.
Oh,
Grayson.
dang.
Yeah, that's all right. Did you watch the Netflix documentary?
No, actually just got a text about how good it was, so I'll probably be watching it tonight.
You should watch it. I would point out though that they followed Boy State in Texas.
Mm.
It's a little different.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's what I heard. It's a little different how they do it, but I heard it's still really, really good. So
Where are you from?
I'm from Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Which high school? Dorman, Spartan High, or
I actually went to Landrum.
Landrum isn't? I didn't know that was actually in Spartanburg County.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's the last exit towards North Carolina. So
Is that 2A or 3A?
we're 2A.
Okay. I went to a 2A school too. Grayson, I feel like you and I are having this conversation and we're losing the rest of the audience. So,
No, sir. I just wanted to ask you, how did your values that you learned at Boyd State lead you through Wofford College and into the years after Wofford?
oh, this is going to be this is probably going to be an answer that's not popular with a lot of people, Grayson, but I'm going to answer it honestly. Blind loyalty, Grayson. Blind loyalty. We were just having that conversation about nationalist and federalist. And you go to Boy State and you're assigned a party when you get there. And the party doesn't really stand for anything when you arrive. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I'm a federalist. And as the week goes on, you become prouder and prouder. So I would say, and I think my friends would say this about me now, like a lot of the friends that I have now, the godfather of my son is a buddy of mine from second grade. The guy I was talking to on the phone today, Sylvester Williams, he and I have been friends since we were like literally 3 years old at St. John's Preschool in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm intensely loyal. And I think that loyalty is something that that Boy State, if it didn't plant the seed, it certainly watered it. But I would also contend that beyond the blind loyalty, it helped me at least develop a healthy appreciation for civil discourse. And back then, it wasn't like an anomaly. It was sort of the norm to a certain extent. But having to get up and give speeches and try and persuade people to come around to your side, that it served me well professionally. I would contend as a married man of almost 10 years now, occasionally it serves me well personally. But the ability to speak and persuade, those are invaluable skills. Can I ask you a question, Grayson?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
What year are you?
At Wofford or
Yeah.
Boyd State?
No, you at Wofford.
I'm a freshman.
Oh, okay. So that's why you're undeclared biology. I gotta be honest with you, Grayson. If you're going to major in biology, you really can't be undeclared or undecided like you.
I know. I plan on declaring soon after this year. So.
Are you enjoying your experience at Wofford so far?
Yes, sir. It's been great. I'm loving it.
What do you think about that Nave Sam hat?
I think he's a pretty cool dude.
There you go. All right. That's the filter we had in the show here. That's the screening Joanne undertook.
Great.
Thank you, Grayson.
The brainwashing is complete.
Thanks, Grayson. I will point out that Bran Stilley sent a message making sure that we all know that Craig was a governor at
Oh,
Boise
gee.
State.
Great. Thanks, Bran. Thanks.
And he also added president of Key Club International.
Wow, that Bran Stiller, he is on top of it. Great.
He also asked a question. He wants to know what other colleges you considered before coming to Wofford.
Of course, the VP of admissions would ask that. Of course, you would ask. Here's the thing, Joanne, this is going to be a sign of my age. I remember, I mean, when you grew up in Columbia, you apply to USC. So I applied to USC, got in there, got in at Clemson. I got in at Morehouse College in Atlanta.
Oh, yeah.
And we would have had to mortgage our house for me to go. So that was a non-starter. And I mentioned George Washington. I got in there. And there was a school in North Carolina. I can't remember off the top of my, I got into 6 schools. I remember that. But it would have been cheaper for me to go to USC and Clemson. But if we're being honest here amongst friends, I couldn't go to school in Columbia because my parents could pop in. And back then, like kids who went to Clemson could barely read. And there was no, like the football program was non-existent. Like you went to Clemson back in the late 90s, it was just Clemson. Like it was, and the face of Clemson, and the kids will Google this, the face of Clemson was a guy named Danny Ford.
I remember.
Oh yeah.
I remember.
Like Clemson was not. So it was, and I had such a great experience at Boise State. And then I went to visit Wofford. And I just kind of like loved the campus, and it just, certain things click. But people ask sometimes, and not to, I know, I'm on the board or whatever, and we're here part of this Wofford Zoom, but people sometimes will say, to what do you attribute your success? And I typically say 3 things: God, my mother, and my choice of college. And for me, and it's not for everyone, but for me, it really did make all the difference, because I know had I gone to one of those larger universities, I would have gotten lost in the shuffle. Like I would not have had the relationships that I had. I probably would not have worked in the president's office. I would not have, joined the fraternity and had these lifelong, it just, I don't think anything happens by chance. So for me, the stars just align perfectly. So I'm sure that's the answer that Bran was looking for, so he could include it in his recruiting video. But it's also a true answer.
That would be my job to help include that in the recruiting video. So, but yeah, that was a tag team effort.
Yeah.
So next is Alyssa Rogers, and she is a senior psychology major from Palmyra, South Carolina.
Oh yeah.
Yes, hello. Thank you for coming to talk to us today again.
Hey, is the professor? I had, oh God, Alston. What's his last name?
Reed.
Yes, is Professor Reed still there?
He retired.
Oh God, that's how old we are.
I know. I need to retire next.
When I was there, he couldn't have been more than, well, I say that, but I guess he probably was in his 50s. He used to do this thing with the rats. It was very weird. I'm sorry, Alyssa. That's not what you signed up for.
No, it's okay. My question's a lot more lighthearted.
Thank
What was your favorite place to eat in Spartanburg?
Oh, Papa Sam's. And you know what? I know Papa Sam's is still there because I was in Spartanburg a couple months ago, and I can't sleep past a certain time because of the job, and so I get up at this ungodly hour, and I was hungry, and I drove over to Papa Sam's and walked in. I was like, oh my God, they've changed absolutely nothing. I cannot believe that the Department of Health has allowed this restaurant to continue operating the way that it's operated, for 40 years. But Papa Sam's was my spot. The ATM machine in the exact same spot that it was 30 years ago, back when ATMs were a fairly, new concept. So yeah, Papa Sam's was my go-to. Where's your favorite spot?
Oh gosh. Probably either Japan House, because they do 10% off for students, or Pokinori.
we didn't have options like that when we were there. Where are these places you speak of? What street?
Japan House is on East Main Street
Okay.
by the Publix and the movie theater.
Sushi wasn't a thing. Sushi wasn't a thing when I was at Wofford. We didn't have that.
And now we have sushi on campus.
Sushi on campus.
Yes.
Dave, my God, you're spoiling these kids. Let me tell you, when I was there, Alyssa, Chick-fil-A. Like I remember sophomore year, the Chick-fil-A came. You would have thought that Jesus the Christ had started teaching a religion class. Like it was like, oh my God, yeah, Chick-fil-A. And now you've got sushi on campus. But yet you kids still complain about things on campus.
I love the food on campus personally.
Really?
I do.
Said 3 Wofford students in history.
No, I've never really had an issue with it.
Wow. What do you want to do with your psychology degree?
I actually have an interview at the University of South Carolina this Friday for a EDS program in counselor education.
You're going to do God's work.
I hope so.
Yes. My God, that's encouraging.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. All right, next we have Graham Boswell. Graham is a junior business economics major from Kansas City, Missouri.
Thank you for coming and speaking to all of us. My question is, and you've already talked a little bit about your fraternity, and I know you're doing a lot of work for promoting them now with Kappa Sigma, but how did your Greek life experience here mold your future and mold your career?
Graham, I'm going to answer your question, but we're certainly not going to pretend like you don't have a giant head over your left shoulder.
Yeah, that's Nathan Hoover. I just figured he'd look good on the wood paneling in my room.
Okay. Are you on campus or off?
I am. I'm in Lasagne, but we made a couple modifications to the room when we moved in.
Nate, we allow modifications to the rooms?
I have flexibility. It's Dean Bigger who's watching. This is the person we have to be careful for.
When I was on campus, you couldn't put anything on your wall without a written letter from Dean Bigger giving you permission. Posters, artwork, anything. So, wow, Graham, I'm glad you're enjoying the new freedom that so many of us suffered for. So, to your point, Graham, are you first of all a Chiefs fan?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're still mourning a little bit.
I know my son is I would go upstairs and get it, but I'm not going to waste the time. We've got a life-size Patrick Mahomes cutout in the house because my son is such a huge Patrick Mahomes fan. And a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to sit down with him, and I mean, he's just a salt of the earth kind of guy. Greek life. Full disclosure, are you in a fraternity or?
I'm a Kappa Sigma as well.
Oh, there you go. What year?
I pledged class of 2018. I'm a junior.
You're a junior. Okay. I was Grand Procurator, which for folks who are watching, that sort of basically vice president. For me, and I think it varies for a variety of people. Some of my like friends now, like there's a buddy of mine, Taylor Strait, which is funny because he was a Grand Master back then. He's a doctor now out in San Diego on the front lines of the pandemic. And I was just talking to him last week and actually sent him, is Drizzly a thing in Spartanburg yet? I don't know if Drizzly's okay. So Drizzly's an app where you can send or you can order alcohol when you are of age, Graham. And Taylor, and he's a big bourbon guy, so I sent him a nice bourbon to thank him for his service. And he and I were talking about sort of being on the back end of the pandemic. And he went to Irmo High School. I went to Columbia High School. They were about 15, 20 about 10, 15 minutes apart. But anyway, we knew each other in high school. We went to Wofford. I didn't know a lot of people. He knew a lot of folks from his high school, and we became instant friends. We knew each other through Key Club. And he and I became friends, pledged the same fraternity, and have been friends for 20 years. A guy named Brant McConkey. You can look these guys up on the wall. Although at this point, I'm pretty sure we're up in the attic now. But a guy named Brant McConkey, who's in Charlotte now, who's the Grand Master of Ceremonies. We became friends at Irma. He was at Irma. We became friends at Wofford. And I say all that to say we became fast friends. And then we pledged. Pledge class back then was like 20, 21 people. It was large for the time. And there was a guy in our pledge class, and I encourage you to look him up. His name was Bobby Ketchy, Robert Monroe Ketchy. He played tennis at Wofford, Graham. And there was a show that used to come on in the 90s called Friends. And there was an episode where they referenced a guy named Fun Bobby. And that became his nickname in the fraternity. Had a great head of hair, could not have been a nicer guy. And he was a dear friend. Drove the Suburban, and when we were pledges, the Suburban came in handy. And after we graduated, it was probably 7 years after we graduated, because I was in Washington. Yeah, 7 years. And got a call from his wife in Charlotte at the time, Courtney Ketchy. And she said, "Hey, Craig, Bobby collapsed on the tennis court. We're not sure what's going on, but, just keep him in your prayers." And I'm a man of faith, and we did. And our fraternity circle, we passed around the message, and we all prayed. Because you'll discover as you get older, you drink a little bit less and you pray a little bit more. And we prayed for our friend. And he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And he started to come, he had to come to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore for his treatment. There are very few places that were offering the kind of treatment that he needed. So my fraternity brother and his new wife would come and stay with me in Washington as he got his treatment for brain cancer. And when I turned 30, I remember vividly, I was living in this new city and I didn't know a lot of folks. I was working too much. And Bobby and his wife would come up about once every 2 months. And at that point I was doing the late news, which is 11 o'clock. And I get home at like 11:30 or 12 o'clock. And I walk into my condo on U Street in Washington. And Bobby and his wife had decorated it for me. I didn't have a lot of friends at that point. For my 30th birthday, which is a big deal when you turn 30. And Bobby died about 3 years later. And toward the end, Graham, we went to Charlotte. It was Bobby, his wife, and at that point, one kid, Sam, his son. His wife was pregnant at the time with their daughter. And it was me, it was Taylor, and it was Brant. It was the three of us sitting around this table in Charlotte as our friend was dying. And we had this conversation. And we talked about, had it not been for the fraternity, we would not have been connected. And I say all that to say, at this point, it's about hanging out. It's about playing video games, it's about drinking beers. It's about, girls and whatever. But you get to a point in your life where if you're doing it right, it's about a lot more than that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Graham. All right, next we have Fudzi Mushiyamunda. Did I say that right? Close enough?
If you didn't, Joanne, you sold it.
I hate to say someone's name wrong, so I'll feel really bad if I did, but she is a junior humanities major, religion minor, and pre-med concentration from Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Sweet God.
My question is just,
No,
do you have
hang
any
on now. Wait
advice?
a minute. Wait, no.
Oh.
No, we can't just jump into it here. Now, give us the correct pronunciation on the name.
It was pronounced correctly. It's Fudsy Mashayamunda.
Did you go to R.J. Reynolds High School?
I didn't, but my brother did. I went to Salem Academy, a little bit smaller.
Okay. All right. Who's been your favorite professor at Wofford so far?
I can't choose. They're all just so good. Oh my gosh.
Give me
I
one.
definitely
Give me two.
Maybe A.K. Anderson. I really like him. He's so sweet. And my favorite professor this semester would probably be Trina Jones. She's also very kind. All good people though. All of them are wonderful. Can't choose.
Forgive my age. Trina, what does she teach?
She teaches religion.
And I feel like A.K. Anderson, Nave, is that religion as well, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think he came toward the back end of either my tenure or right at the beginning of when I graduated. Okay. All right. So religion, those are your favorite courses. That helps me.
Yes.
So what do you want to be when you grow up?
I have no idea. I was just planning to do as much as I could while I was here and then figure it out once I leave. But I have no idea.
Smart.
Which kind of leads to my question, because I applied for the NBC internship and I have an interview next week. And I just wanted to know if you have any like advice for someone that's applying for this internship.
You know what I appreciate? You didn't waste your shot. That's what I respect. You did not. Some people go macro, some go micro. You went micro. I respect that. I would give you three pieces of advice. 3 pieces, and remember these. You would be surprised how many people don't do the first thing. If you're applying for an internship at NBC News, you should be intimately familiar with the broadcasts of NBC News. The Today Show, Nightly News, MSNBC, NBC News Now, Peacock, the new streaming platform as well. You should demonstrate a thorough working knowledge of all. Because when I started, it was just NBC. It was like the Today Show and Nightly News, and MSNBC, but they were so separate. But now, like, there's so many different platforms. You should make sure that. Do you know who you're interviewing with yet?
I think is there someone named Larissa Gonzalez?
Elizabeth Gonzalez?
Yes.
Yes. So, well, you know her as Elizabeth Gonzalez. Her last name is actually Lasky, Elizabeth Lasky. Let's me and you offline, and Dean Bigger or somebody can get you my email, or so we can talk. But I'll give you some pointers. But first of all, make sure you're watching and reading like our news, but also more than that. Not to sound condescending, but make sure you know what's happening in the world. There's a tendency when you're in college, this is the case for me, like you live in this bubble. Like you don't really know what's happening outside the bubble. And maybe that's changed to a certain extent because of social media. But when I was on campus, like you could go days without knowing that some sort of major news event had happened. You want to make sure that you know what's happening in the world and you're familiar with the products of NBC News. But I know Elizabeth well. She's in charge of our internship program. So let's make sure that you and I actually talk and communicate offline before your interview so you don't blow it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. And I just put his email in a private message to you. So
Wow, you guys are efficient, Joanne.
Thank you.
on it, so on it. Final question of the night. This is a blast from the past. Amy Lancaster.
Hey, Craig.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
I'll go easy on you. Give me a break.
You let Amy ask a question, Joanne?
You know, I have to live and work here every day.
We graduated together. Like she knows all the secrets.
Well, at least I'm not pulling out pictures and
Thank you.
I was
Thank you.
hoping to hear some of the secrets.
No, it's not. We don't have time for that.
yeah, we've sworn each other to secrecy.
Yes, we have.
Craig, I'm curious in your wisdom that you've acquired since graduating over the last 2 decades. Thanks for that reminder. Knowing what you know now, is there anything that you would do to change your Wofford experience if you could go back and do it all over again?
That's a good question.
And your friends.
That's a good question.
Because of Amy's our Dean of International Programs, you're supposed to say study abroad, Craig.
No, here's the thing. I've said before, Dean Bigger, not to sound, not to take your bait, but when I was there, study abroad was big. I was so afraid of missing out on something on campus that I didn't do it. And I also didn't really get it didn't cost more, like the fees would transfer. I didn't understand all that. That is actually one regret that I do have. And it's one reason why, not to put the cart before the horse, Nate, but one of the things that President Sam Hatton and I have talked about in terms of giving back to the college, Lindsay and I have decided that we want to create experiences for other students who come from modest means, can travel abroad, who can experience the world. And I don't have a lot of regrets, but I do remember vividly sophomore year having conversations with buddies who were going abroad the following year and thinking, oh, that'd be cool. And even I didn't do well in Spanish, like Dr. Akers. I don't think even now he would say that I was in his top 3,000 students in the history of Spanish, but there were other kids who were going to like London or Australia or countries where you didn't really have to speak the language to get the experience. And I just didn't do it because I don't know. I wanted to stay on campus. So that's one thing. That's one thing I would change. I also probably, Amy, or well, I guess I'm not supposed to call her Amy, am I? I'm supposed to call her.
You're supposed to call me Amy.
Oh. So I think another thing I probably would have changed, but it's hard to say this now because again, at 41, you're looking back on it and you're like, well, I was 20, so it's kind of hard to. But I probably would have partied a little bit less and probably committed myself just a smidge more to my studies. I probably would have taken a few more courses outside of my comfort zone as well. Like once I committed to government, and I know the curriculum's changed now, so you sort of have to, but back then you could, once you declared a major, you could really sort of focus all your attention on that major. And I only had to take one econ class and one religion class and one psychology class. And so I wasn't really forced to develop that intellectual curiosity that we've talked about. So those are some of the changes. But again, to be clear, I don't want people walking away with the wrong idea. Like, I'm fine with the decisions I made. I just think that 41-year-old Craig, looking back at 21-year-old Craig, sometimes grimaces a lot.
Well, I think Dean Bigger and I can agree that you.
All right, that's good. Good to see you, Amy. Thanks. We're gonna mute
You maximized your Wofford experience.
We're gonna mute Amy. How do you mute Amy, Joanne?
All right, that was it. That was our last question. Nate.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks everyone for being on. The secrets remain locked. So that's a good thing.
Hey, Naif, I just, I do want to say, not to sound too cheesy here, but that I want to thank all the students for logging on. But also, I want to thank, and I think it's important for folks, especially students and staff who are with us right now, to understand that being the president of a college in 2021, it ain't easy. But you've made it look easy on a number of levels. And I'm not just talking about that $150 million that you managed to secure over the past few weeks, but even before that, navigating a pandemic, and navigating the social justice movement that we're all navigating right now. You've done a masterful job, and I know that so much of that isn't you; it's Prema. So a special thanks to her, but a thanks to you as well for leading the place that we love so well during these tumultuous times, my friend.
Well, I appreciate it. Again, we have wonderful students here at the college, and the staff who I work with, and the faculty and the coaches. They're the ones that make all the difference. I do get to talk about it, and it's just an honor to be here and to serve everyone. So I appreciate that. On behalf of everyone here at the college, I appreciate it. And of course, even on behalf of Prema. I rarely speak on her behalf, but.
Naif, we forgot to, I didn't plug my book, so we'll have to come back and do it.
Yes.
No, I'm not, no, no, but we'll come back and do a book thing in June.
Yes.
Because I found out last week that apparently I don't get paid unless the book sells a certain amount. So there's that.
Tell everybody what the name of it is so they can pre-order it.
Oh, that's Dean Bigger. Yes. The book is called Pops. And I know many of you don't have a lot of money because you're college students, but I would encourage you to skip meals and not buy beer. And don't buy your beer and wine on the weekends. Pre-order Pops. It's a story about a lot of different things, but more than anything about the complicated relationship between fathers and sons, and addiction and resilience, and overcoming a host of odds. So if you can afford to pre-order, do. If you come from means, I would encourage you to buy the audio portion of the book. That's $40. That's the most expensive version, apparently. And it's also, according to the agent, it's also the version that I get the biggest chunk from. So
there you go. Well, I think you did a good job pushing that book. There we go.
And it might actually, for college students that are trying to save up but need to buy their dad something for Father's Day, maybe we could work out a book signing before Father's Day. So you
Joanne,
can
how
get
about this?
my copy.
How about I commit to any Wofford student that buys the book for his or her dad? I'll sign it with a personalized message if they pay for shipping.
All right. All right.
Then we'll
We'll
work
get
that.
details on
We'll
that.
get a channel for that. How's that?
Yes.
Have you here back in town, in June, as we talked about, do a reading and a little reception.
A board meeting.
Yeah.
Dean Bigger never stops, does she? She just never stops.
Never.
I get emails at 3 a.m. from Dean Bigger asking me questions.
Demanding
Sean.
money.
Demanding. Craig, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, guys.
Love and best to your wonderful family, wife and children, and we look forward to seeing you back at Wofford soon.
Be well, Nick. Be well, Wofford. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Craig.
Bye.